separately. The process goes from comment, DM, email, phone to in person. Number 8 was tag them in your stories. Number 9, so as I get to the end, I've saved some of the best stuff. I think number 9, I'll just give you some insight. There's a lot of things that are surface level that anyone making a course could understand and acknowledge, even if they're charging you a few $100s. And if you want to connect on social media, the one thing that I've experienced thanks to my job and the people I've met, people of influence, poor connection. Okay, I think we're back. David Meltzer talks about something called spheres of influence, and this is how it works. You connect with other people with an idea that eventually they're going to talk about you to each other. So maybe I'm connecting really hard with someone who I know in hopes that, connecting really hard with this person, knowing that they know the other person I'm trying to connect with. So I make an impression with them, and you use that connection to eventually get, when your name comes up, to get you to the right spot. So here's how the name game works. Maybe you get your first big moment. Maybe you have someone who you've been dying to reach out to, and you finally get a hold of, Tony Robbins, or let's talk business for a minute. Let's say Tony Robbins. You finally get a hold of Tony Robbins. He's the biggest influencer in the world. It doesn't matter when that happened. It could have been yesterday. Maybe he replied to your comment, whatever it is. Maybe he followed you, something crazy, right? As soon as you get that, you leverage it. So when you're talking to someone else, and you're talking to them and you're discussing with them, maybe they reply once, you get through, you leverage who you just spoke with. So the first big name will allow you to get to other names. This has happened to me 3 or 4 times. 2 examples. Number 1, I met Charlie Rocket 2 months ago. We got cool. We got on the phone, followed me on Instagram. I'm going to get to meet him. He's coming out to the studio next month. I met him, and I met another guy. I did the same tools I'm talking about. I connected. I did something deep. I talked about quantum physics, something that attracted this guy, and I DM'd him. He's a guy who lives in New York. His name's Mario. He has his own show. He's on TV. I connected with him. He responded to my DM, and he loved it. And we connected by the fact that we both knew Charlie. I said, hey, yeah, I saw you I saw you commented on Charlie's thing. I think that's how I found you. It's funny how we reconnected or whatever. And he really connected with that. And he's like, yeah, Charlie's cool. So we connected because we both knew Charlie. That is the same way I connected with David Meltzer. Also because David Meltzer had just hung out with Charlie. I had just spoken with him. So I connected the two. Who you know, right? That connects you to other people. People hear the name and they say, oh, they know this person. The other thing is, if you can get one of these people to follow you, get one of these gurus, influencers to follow you online, and when they do, and you follow other people, they may not know who you are. And I'm going to get to the final tip now about Instagram on the next page, about how you can have your profile set up the right way. But if Tony Robbins is following me and I follow someone else, they may be like, I don't know who this kid is. His page looks pretty good. I don't know what he's done yet, but if Tony Robbins follows him, that's good enough for me. He must be a big deal because Tony Robbins doesn't follow anyone. So that's another way. So like I said, if you're getting any value from this, we're getting into the final stretch run. I've been going for 40 minutes. Those who pick through this, those who take the tools, take it seriously, you can connect with anyone in the world. I'm excited to see your results. I've connected with tons of people from this. So now I want to get into Instagram. 3 major things on Instagram. Some of these things will allow you to act as a magnet to attract other people to you. You need to have some of these key things in place so when you reach this person, so when they come to check out your profile, you're all set. Because if you're not, you just wasted your chance and it was for nothing. So number 10 is your profile. On Instagram, there's, I think it's pretty important, is your ratio, your following to follower ratio. Not everyone has a bunch of fans. Not everyone has some big influence. Not everyone has a ton of followers. But if you're following 5,000 people and you only have 400 followers, people are not going to take you seriously for a second. They're not going to think you're a person of influence. They're not going to give you the time of the day. So have your Instagram following ratio at least equal, or have more followers than following, because that shows you're a person of influence. Next, you want to have a strong bio on Instagram. A strong bio, letting people know exactly what you're all about, what your key things are, what value you've done, what you've brought to the market. Like, hey, I help salespeople make money. I am a part of Overcome Nation. My goal is to be a billionaire by 40, right? You list things that are attractive. Have a strong bio. Number 3 under your profile is you need to be utilizing Instagram My Stories. Instagram My Stories, you segment them out. They are your reputation. Instagram is literally like an online resume. I know part of why I ended up getting hired is because I had a presence online. So segmenting off things you've done. I have one that says inspire. It's on my Instagram. My Instagram is Corrupt Sanity, and I wrote inspire, and there it shows all the people I've met. So if people come to my page and they want to be like, I don't know this guy, his stuff looks good, let's check this out. And they see, okay, I was with Andy Frisella, I was with Charlie Rocket, so on, Grant Cardone, whoever. You leverage these people. That's part of the name game. They see who you're with and they say, okay, this guy must be up to something. They give you a follow or they connect with you, right? Number 10 or number 11, profile part 2. Like I said before, you need to be ready when they arrive. You want your profile to be up to par, so when people come to it, they have something to take in or they have something to gauge you off of. You don't want to have the embarrassing photo. You don't want to have you getting drunk. You want to have it be strong. You want to have it to be attractive, things that maybe will interest them depending on who you're reaching out to. And that goes right into number 2. If you follow me on Instagram, you see I post Instagram stories all the time. I'm very transparent about what I do. I'm very transparent about my successes. So a lot of people may think, why do you share all your successes? You're trying to show off, like, keep it to yourself. I don't care. That's your thought, but there's a few things that go into that. One, you can inspire people. People see what's possible. Maybe they follow suit. Maybe you see someone who has a Ferrari or Lamborghini and that makes you work hard instead of, being jealous or envious. So the reason I post so much is to be attractive. I want my page to be a magnet. When people come to it, they can see all the different things I've diversified myself in, things I do for fun, and I look interesting. I show that I bring value so they come to me. Your Instagram is your online resume. I stated that. Profile part 2. If you want to be an influencer, if you want to attract people, maybe you don't want to be an influencer, whatever your specialty is, if it's a fundraiser, if it's, you're a model and you want to get noticed by a famous model and get on the runways, whatever it is, you want to post like another form of your resume, your portfolio. So for me on my Instagram profile, this year I created ZachKrupp.com. It's a personal development website that has everything about me. It gives a whole idea of me. Now I know for a fact that certain people have viewed this website, people who are of high standard. They've checked me out, they've come to my page, they've clicked on it, and the first thing they see could be something that sets me apart. Now, I met someone who has a high level of influence, and when they saw that, they checked out ZachKrupp.com. When I wasn't around, they listened to one of my videos, they listened to my story and where I started from, and they were inspired. And they literally said, dude, we want to work with you. We want to we want to blow you up. I want to introduce you to this person, that person. I want to put you on reality TV, all this stuff, just from having my profile, having something that people can see, an online portfolio. So the right people see it, you get an impression. It's worth your time. Invest in that. Number 12. Leverage. Leverage. This is a life hack. This is a life tip. Social media as well. Life tip. Leverage 2 major things against each other. It's the fastest way to elevate in life. If you want to accelerate, if you want to get to the next level, you can't just have one thing. Now, don't get me wrong. You want to be an expert. You want to master one thing, because if you're a man of many things and you master none, you're of no value. And I even struggle with that. But what I've realized is having 2 things in place, you play one off the other. So if you are a salesman, for example, like I am, well, before I was a salesman, something I did, which I still do, is Viseo. And Viseo is health and wellness. It's something I do, whatever. But when I go to talk to the people in sales and we're talking about sales, the other thing I talk about is I elevate and I highlight what I do in Viseo. And when I go to Viseo, people ask me about what I do in my 9-to-5 with sales and with Jeffrey. So you play the 2 against each other, and it helps bring more brand recognition, more name, more momentum for what you're doing. Because if people want to interview you, if people want to get to know you, if people think you're a person of influence, they say, oh, this kid's crushing it. He's doing A, B, C, D. They don't just say, oh, he's in sales. He's good at sales. No, you want them to know you have a credit course coming out. You do this, you do that, right? So that's number 12, leverage two things against each other, the most powerful thing I've ever learned in my short life. Number 13 is like the grand finale, right? Massive action plans. I talk about how anything in the world is possible. I have a giant vision board in front of me with everyone that I want to connect with in the world. The way you connect with these people is through a massive action plan. You have to decide how important it is for you to reach these people. So I have a few examples of massive action plans and how they've worked, or maybe how they haven't worked, but they've always worked in some degree. So the first is how I got my job. Jeffrey and Jen, right? I work for Jeffrey Gitomer. He's an author, a sales trainer, a speaker. I've worked for him for 7 months. How did this start? It started very small. I started by reading a book. I picked up his book from the library, The Little Red Book of Selling. I read it. It was pretty good. It said in there, follow my newsletter online. I followed his newsletter. The newsletter would come to me. The newsletter told me, hey, check out my podcast. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I connected with him. Actually, that's not true. It said, follow my podcast. So I followed his podcast. I finished reading the book. In the book, it said, writing is the key to credibility. Go out and write. So I created a LinkedIn from scratch, and I wrote an article on LinkedIn all about books, all about Jeffrey and how the key to credibility is writing. As I made that article, I followed along with his podcast. I would comment on his stuff on LinkedIn, but in his podcast, he announced he was having a contest. I had been listening to him. He said, hey, I'm doing a giveaway. I'm flying one lucky winner to Charlotte. You can be on my podcast. In between all this, I entered the podcast. It was I entered the contest. It was a video contest. It was a 2-month application period. It took a little time. In the meantime, I was now following their newsletters, Jeffrey as well as Jennifer. I was following them on LinkedIn. I would make a comment. I would tag them in things. I would respond to their newsletters. That's another tip. No one responds to newsletters. People have a mailing list where they send out like 20,000 people to their newsletter. People just read it, but no one thinks to reply. If you reply, you're like one of 5 people out of 20,000. That's an instant way to get people's attention. So I was doing all this, won the contest, flew out to Charlotte, great, awesome. And by the time I got there, I don't think they knew a ton about me. They just watched my video. But long story short, I made all these different they're called like touches. So I made all these different touches from this place, that place, and I made a good enough impression to where they ended up hiring me. And now, I work there. Now we are on a friendly level, whatever. So massive action plans get you massive results. This got me a great job out of college. Another example is, and I explained all those, is Charlie Rocket. Now, this isn't my own example. I reference Charlie Rocket a lot because he's a guy a little bit older than me who's absolutely crushing it, and I love what he's doing. So Charlie Rocket was a manager for 2 Chainz. He got there from working really hard, but he was extremely overweight. He wanted to be a Nike athlete. It seemed impossible. He was 300 pounds. He had a brain tumor. How would he ever become a Nike athlete? These guys are the best Nike athletes in the world. He read Nike's slogan, and it says, in order to be an athlete, you need to have a body. So what he did is he hired a video cameraman. I don't know, maybe he paid $50, $100. This guy helped him record his own inspirational Nike commercial. He made it himself. He put some subtitles on there. He, ran around. He made an inspiring Nike commercial saying, "Dear Nike, I'm Charlie Rocket. You don't know me yet, but you said your slogan is to have a body is what it takes to be an athlete." He made this video. It went absolutely viral. Thousands of people, that's not true. Over 1 million people saw it within a week, and Nike saw it. Nike reached out to Charlie and said, "Hey, Charlie, we saw your video. You have people at Nike crying, like people are shaken up. We don't know who you are, but we want to meet you. We're flying you out to Nike." So he took massive action. He made a whole commercial with no guarantee that he would even get to Nike. But the even bigger thing about all of this is he's very big about quantum physics and writing down goals, right? Which is a good habit to have, writing down what you want, your affirmations. He wrote a few months prior, "I'm going to be a Nike athlete." And you fast forward to now, 2 months ago, he was in a Nike commercial with LeBron James, Serena Williams, and Colin Kaepernick. It's one of the biggest, most controversial Nike commercials. It's because he took massive action. He lost hundreds of pounds. So that's just an example of how you can use massive action plans. Like a massive action plan if you take all these tips, all 13 tips, rewatch this video, string them all together, write them down, take notes, target your favorite influencer, see what sites they're on, you can create a massive action plan. And I guarantee a few things. I don't guarantee you're going to hang out with them and they're going to love you or whatever, but they're going to see what you're doing. They are going to become aware of you. You are going to get on their radar. They're going to see something you did and be like, shit, like I'm aware of this guy. This is inspirational. This is exciting. This is funny. They're going to become aware of you. The reason that's key is if you ever meet them, they're going to already know who you are, and that may benefit you some other way. They might bring someone over and say, hey, check out this guy. Here's the guy from social media, and they already know you. So there's so many benefits to making a massive action plan, tying all these tips together, and putting them out to the world. That's pretty much the keys that I have. Knowing, just summarizing it all up, there's 13 keys, but like I said, I've used all these if you're just tuning on. I started with NBA players, a couple people I didn't name, all my favorite people. Mike Lindell. Mike Lindell is the My Pillow guy. He follows me on Instagram. You know, I've DM'd him a few times. That's cool. I've connected with him through social media. I touched on over 20 NBA players I've connected with, how I've gotten free tickets from those. And I've talked about all the influencers I've connected with online that got me, you know, a dream job of mine. It got me to meet, you know, the Wolf on Wall Street, Grant Cardone, all these influential people.